And because of that, when I use Liu primary instead of William Wallace primary, the I can never pronounce it. The maneuverability. I recently spent 690 sculptures on William Wallace to expertise him and prove that he is a freaking beast. So today we're going to go over a bunch of things. Number one, how was my experience? How it felt to use Liu and William Wallace? How this march did perform? Of course, you saw the numbers already, but what I want to discuss is the overall feeling of the march, because the feeling is super important. How strong did I feel using that march? And number two, I'm going to give you guys a complete flowchart that I created, which pretty much tells you if you should invest on William Wallace in the first place. And number three, we're going to discuss the best infantry gear that you can use on your William Wallace Liu march or Liu William Wallace. We will discuss which one should be the primary as well, because when it comes to gear, infantry gear, there is two major things that you need to know, little nuances that you need to know when it comes to gearing up your Liu and William Wallace march. So it's going to be probably a long video, but you'll find a lot of useful information. Without further ado, let's go. Right, so starting with the overall feel of the march, as you can see, like these reports are, even this one, like I was sad-faced on this report. Look at that, defeat. I had 0 troops left, and even this is more than 1 to 3. And these ones, 1 to 2s, 1 to 3s, are usually me standing right here and like 4 to 5 enemy marches are hitting me. And of course, we do have some crazy numbers like 700, 1571, like, and 1.1k. Like, these are crazy, but don't let these reports fool you. Like, this is not something that you should expect all the time. This is when your enemy is retreating. By the way, there is a fight I need to join. I need to finish this video quick. That's when your enemy is retreating and you are dealing skill damage, but the only damage they are dealing back is the counterattack damage, so that you get these type of crazy reports. Now, overall feeling for me, William Wallace and Liu march, I felt like this march was extremely strong, no matter who I come up against. Whether it's CPO Liu, Zhuge Liang Herman, Nevsky John, QB John, doesn't matter, like that march felt super strong. And considering the fact that yes, I was super lucky, I crafted 6 legendary equipment and I got 4 special talents, my equipment compared to players who migrated back to KVK 2 and 3, let alone higher iconic tiers, I don't even have iconic crystal on my boots and the weapon. My accessories are garbage. And also, I mean, I wouldn't say garbage, but it's not even close to being a really good armament set. So taking these into account, I will say like these reports and, you know, the kill points that I got from my William Wallace Liu march is pretty decent. Now let's take a look at the flowchart that I created and decide if specifically for your account, should you invest on William Wallace or not. Right, so we have the flowchart in front of us right now. The first question that we should be asking to ourselves when deciding on investing William Wallace or not, do you have expertise Alexander the Great with double relic? If the answer is yes, you skip William Wallace, you use Liu with Alex, that's a great march. If the answer is no, we're gonna go back to the start. Do you have expertise CPO Prime? If the answer is yes, the next question you should be asking to yourself, do you plan to use 2 infantry marches? If the answer is yes again, we are gonna ask the same question. Do you already have a max Alexander the Great? If yes, again, skip William Wallace. Even if you are using 2 infantry marches, you can simply use Guan and CPO as your 1 march, and for 2 marches, just go with Liu and Alex. That is perfect. You can even consider Ragnar Prime, who is about to be released, because if I'm not mistaken, he's not a smite damage infantry, he's a skill damage infantry with AoE. So maybe if we go CPO and Ragnar, who knows? But if you already have Alex, CPO Prime, you don't need to invest on William Wallace. But if we go back and if your answer to the question, do you have Alexander Great maxed and if you're going to use 2 infantry marches, if your answer is no, then yes, you should invest on William Wallace. This way you can go Liu and William Wallace, again, go on with CPO or CPO with Ragnar. And if your answer to previous question, which is do you plan to use 2 infantry marches, if the answer is no, you just skip William Wallace because you already have CPO Prime and you use CPO Prime primary and Liu secondary. That is again a perfect infantry march. Now, the final thing, the most tricky one. You have 0 expertise infantry commanders, or it is just Liu. Let's say you max Liu, you are using him with 5511 Pires, Charles Patel, whatever you have, but basically you have not spent any sculptures on any other infantry commander. The first question, again, do you plan to use 1 or 2 infantry marches? If the answer is 2 marches, just go ahead and invest on William Wallace, simple as that. If you plan to use 1 infantry march only, then we need to consider your spending level. Because if the answer is no, again, go ahead and William Wallace, I will explain why. But if the answer is yes, will this be your main march that you use in altars, ruins where you can bring 1 march only, Or in general, like, do you want this march to be your absolute best march so that maybe later on in KVK, when you are low on resources and speed ups, this is the only march that you are going to use. For example, for me, this is the only march that I'm using right now. And again, this is the only march that I'm going to be using on the next KVK as well. If the answer is yes, I would say go ahead and invest on William Wallace again, because even though CPO brings the debuff, brings the AoE damage, double smite damage commander reports will usually look better, and it's just gonna get you more kills. Overall utility is going to be not as good as CPO because again the AoE and the health debuff, but on paper when it comes to numbers it's going to get you more kills with minimum number of marches. Now, if it's not going to be your main march, I would say skip William Wallace, because if you are a mid spender, remember you answered this yes, and what you can do is you don't need to max CPO Prime, right? You don't have to, at least instantly. You max Liu Che and you pair your Liu Che with a 5551 CPO Prime, and then what you can do, you can spend your sculpture elsewhere on another commander and you can keep working on your CPO Prime from the dailies and expertise him at some point without using any more universal sculptures. If we take a look at his expertise, yes, extra 10% skill damage is good, but considering the fact that we are going to use CPO Prime with Liu Che, he's not going to get any benefit from this. This will only work for CPO. 30% faster rage gain if the target is silence. Yes, there will be other Guans on the field, but you cannot rely on that. If you're not going to use your CPO Prime without Guan Yu, I would say his expertise is not necessary at first. Of course, at some point you want to get his last skill to max, so eventually he's going to be expertise no matter what, because you want this max as well, but it's not the highest priority. Most time, we never have enough sculptures, right? There is always a commander that we want to invest. So what you can do, you can just skip William Wallace. Instead, start with a 5551 CPO Prime, then expertise him over the course of time with dailies, and instead use those sculptures on another commander, because number one, you are a mid spender, so you are able to afford the dailies, and number two, your answer, will this be your main march for altars, etc., was no. This march is going to still work perfectly fine even without William Wallace, with a CPO primary and Liu Che secondary, so you don't need to spend your sculptures on William. So take a look at your account and take a look at this flowchart and decide or find out if you should be investing on William Wallace or not. Now, we have two more important topics. Number one, between William Wallace and Liu Che, who should be the primary? And number two, the best possible infantry equipment for a William Wallace Liu Che march. And these two things are actually tied to each other. I'll explain why just in a moment. Let's start with infantry gear. Yes, KVK weapon and KVK helm will give you more stats. However, if we take a look at the second skill of William Wallace, your march speed is 20%. It's not the highest, especially considering Alexander the Great provides 30%. It is a big difference. 10% is a big difference. You can definitely feel it on the field. And to be able to make up for it a little bit, you definitely want to go with 4 pieces set. That's the first thing. And the second important thing that you need to keep in mind, once you start working on the awaken levels of your infantry gear, my advice is get every single piece to awaken level 2 first, and then go all in on your infantry boots, get it to awaken tier 5. Because yes, base health, defense, unit capacities are good, but the most important ones are going to be march speed 5% and fleeted footman another 5% march speed. So this will give you extra 10% march speed on top of your 4 pieces set bonus to make up for the lack of movement speed. Because if we take a look at a brief look at the reports, as you can see, most of the time, Liu Che was my primary. And the reason lies within the talent trees. So this, I think, the best possible talent tree for William Wallace primary when it comes to open field fighting. And as you can see, we are missing a lot of movement speed talents, and we surely cannot drop Hold the Line, we cannot drop Undying Fury, or Strong of Body. If we go back to Liu Che, however, I think this is the best talent tree for Liu Che. We have the Effortless, we have the Martial Mastery, and we have Fight to the Death. This means we have a lot more extra talents that we can spend on the infantry tree, and we can get this extra movement speed here, and also another 6% here. And because of that, when I use Liu Che primary instead of William Wallace primary, the I can never pronounce it. The maneuverability is way better because of the extra movement speed. So that's the only reason why I'm using Liu Che primary, because there is a massive talent on this tree, which is Fight or Flight. Whenever this commander troops deal any type of smite damage, all troops hit by the damage lose 45 rage. This means if we use him with secondary Liu Che, all 5 troops are going to lose 45 rage, which is amazing. However, Right now, I think with my current gear, using Liu primary for a little bit more movement speed is better. Once I got my boost to tier 5 iconic or awaken level tier 5 and get this extra 10% movement speed in total, I will again start using William Wallace as the primary and Liu the secondary. Now, before we finish the video, there is one more crucial thing that you guys need to know. This talent right here to the bitter end, I think it is wasted, because what happens is you don't start with this bonus, you don't start with this talent active. You first need to be in the battle for at least 10 seconds, then it starts to kick in. However, it's not the same story when it comes to Liu, because if we take a look at effortless, it says while in combat. This commander's troop gain a 2.5% bonus to damage dealt every 10 seconds, goes up to 10%, but it says while in combat. When you first attack your enemy, it starts to kick in, it starts counting. You start with 2.5%. But unfortunately, it's not the same with William Wallace's To the Bitter End talent. It starts counting once you first enter the battle, and after 10 seconds, you start getting the bonus. So that's, I guess, another reason why you should consider Liu primary instead of William Wallace. But as I said, once I got my boost to tier 5, I'm gonna go back to using William Wallace as the primary just because of that massive rage reduction with Liu AoE. But until then, Liu is going to be our primary commander and William Wallace will be the secondary. So this was my personal experience with William Wallace and Liu March. I'm super happy with the performance of this march, and remember the flowchart, I was right here. Will this be your main march when it comes to altars, ruins, etc.? My answer was yes. So I went ahead and invested on William Wallace for the best possible reports, basically. I see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.